Welcome to a journey through the world of politics, where change seems to promise so much but often delivers so little. Did you know that a study by Princeton University found that the views of the average American have almost no impact on policy? That's right. Despite millions voting every election, decisions are frequently shaped by a small group of wealthy donors and lobbyists. Consider this shocking statistic. In 2020, big corporations and special interest groups spent over $3.5 billion on lobbying in the US alone. That's more than the GDP of some small nations. This money doesn't just influence politicians, it controls the political narrative and keeps real change at bay. But why does this happen? Why do politicians seem stuck in the same old patterns? In this video, we'll explore the hidden forces that keep our political system from evolving. You'll learn how media manipulation, fear of reform, and the art of division play crucial roles in maintaining the status quo. So, if you're ready to uncover the truth behind the illusion of political change, stay tuned. You might be shocked by what you find. Let's dive in. Chapter 1: The Illusion of Choice. Why elections don't change anything. You walk into the voting booth, confident that your choice will lead to change. But what if that choice isn't as real as it seems? The truth is, elections often give the illusion of choice without offering real alternatives. In a study by Princeton University, it was found that public opinion has a near-zero impact on actual policy changes. Meanwhile, the wealthy and well-connected get what they want almost every time. So, where does that leave the average voter? Many people don't realize that the two-party system in many countries limits our options. Sure, you can vote Democrat or Republican, but are their policies really that different when it comes to issues like Wall Street regulation or foreign wars? It's like picking between two sides of the same coin. This is why change feels so distant. Author Noam Chomsky famously said, "The smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow very lively debate within that spectrum." This means we're often arguing over the surface details, while the underlying system remains untouched. Both sides keep the conversation on hot-button topics, but the big decisions, like where the money goes, are rarely debated. Even with candidates who promise transformation, like Barack Obama or Donald Trump, the system itself limits their ability to enact deep reforms. Despite grand promises, policies often look surprisingly similar once they're in office. The system has too many checks and balances, not on power, but on change. The illusion of choice is maintained by offering candidates who may look different but operate within the same rules. As a voter, you might think you're selecting a direction for the country. In reality, you're just choosing between versions of the same story. The political system is designed to protect itself, not to serve the people. Chapter 2: The Hidden Hand. Who really pulls the strings in politics? Ever wonder why some policies seem to fly through Congress while others get buried? The answer usually lies with those who aren't elected at all: lobbyists, corporations, and special interest groups. These are the real power players behind the scenes, using money and influence to shape the political agenda. According to data from OpenSecrets.org, over $3.5 billion was spent on lobbying in the US in 2020 alone. That's more than the GDP of some small countries. Corporations like Amazon, Google, and oil giants spend millions every year to push for regulations that favor them. And they almost always get what they want. That's because politicians depend on these groups for campaign funding. Political scientist Thomas Ferguson calls this the investment theory of politics, where those with the most money control the direction of government. You may vote for your local representative, but those billion-dollar companies often have more sway over their decisions than you do. They've perfected the art of influence, through donations, lobbying, and even hiring former politicians as consultants. One of the most striking examples of corporate influence is the revolving door between Congress and lobbying firms. A report by Public Citizen revealed that 60% of senators and representatives who leave office become lobbyists. They move seamlessly from making laws to manipulating them. That's why big industries like pharmaceuticals or defense rarely face meaningful regulation. Think about this: when was the last time you saw a significant law passed that reduced the power of big corporations? Exactly. The system is built to protect their interests, not to challenge them. This hidden hand operates quietly but effectively, and it's one of the biggest reasons real political change is so hard to achieve. Chapter 3: The Status Quo Trap. Why politicians fear real reform. Politicians love to talk about change, but when it comes down to it, many of them are terrified of actually implementing it. Why? Because the system rewards keeping things the way they are. Change is risky, and risk can cost votes, donors, and media support. A classic example is healthcare reform in the United States. Over 70% of Americans have consistently supported some form of universal healthcare, according to Gallup. Yet, meaningful change never seems to happen. That's because politicians who push too hard for reforms face backlash, not just from political opponents but from powerful industries like insurance and pharmaceuticals. The result? They settle for half measures that maintain the status quo. This fear of reform is known as political risk aversion. Politicians are constantly balancing the need to win elections with the pressure to deliver results for donors and interest groups. Real reform, whether it's in healthcare, education, or environmental policy, threatens those established interests. The cost of change is often higher than the cost of doing nothing, at least for politicians. Think about the Green New Deal. It's one of the most ambitious climate policies ever proposed. Yet, despite a clear need for environmental action, many politicians refuse to support it. They fear losing support from the fossil fuel industry, a sector that spent nearly $120 million on lobbying in 2022 alone, OpenSecrets.org. In this case, politicians choose the safer path, sticking with the status quo. Political analyst Andrew Gelman once wrote, "To stay in power, politicians must appear to represent change, but they can't do so in ways that truly disrupt the system." And that's the heart of the issue. Politicians want to seem like they're fighting for change, but they rarely want to challenge the very structures that keep them in office. In the end, the fear of losing power or upsetting the delicate balance of political alliances means real reform is often sacrificed. This isn't about a lack of will, it's about self-preservation. And that's why you rarely see the transformative change you're promised during campaign season. If you're enjoying this video and want to see more content that dives deep into the truth of politics, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Chapter 4: Media Manipulation. How news outlets shape political narratives. If you've ever watched the news and thought, "Something's missing here," you're not alone. Media plays a massive role in shaping our understanding of politics, but not always in the way we think. It's not just about reporting the news, it's about deciding which news gets reported and how it's framed. Most major news outlets are owned by a handful of corporations. As of 2020, just 6 companies controlled about 90% of the media in the United States, according to Business Insider. These companies have their own interests, often tied to the same industries that lobby Congress. This means that what gets reported, and what doesn't, can be influenced by those corporate agendas. For example, it's common for networks to spend hours on political scandals while giving only a few minutes to important policy debates. Why? Scandals get more views. In fact, studies show that sensational news stories boost TV ratings by up to 30%. This creates a cycle where media outlets prioritize attention-grabbing stories, even if they don't add much value to the political conversation. This isn't new. The phrase, "if it bleeds, it leads," has been a newsroom mantra for decades. But it has consequences. When media focuses on sensationalism, it distracts the public from issues that actually matter, like healthcare, education, or income inequality. Instead, we get endless coverage of political drama, which leaves us thinking change is happening, even when it's not. Media also has a tendency to frame political debates as us versus them. This reinforces divisions between parties and keeps viewers locked in their own echo chambers. A study by the Pew Research Center found that 72% of Americans say news organizations tend to favor one side of an issue. That's not surprising when you consider that networks often tailor their reporting to their audience's political leanings. Fox News leans conservative, CNN leans liberal. But both are more interested in keeping their viewers engaged than in giving a full picture of the truth. By carefully curating the stories we see, the media plays a quiet but powerful role in maintaining the political status quo. It keeps us focused on personalities, not policies, and on conflicts, not solutions. If you found value in this video and want to keep exploring the truth about politics, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more insightful content.